All right, for our second segment here, we have Tony Wash, director and producer of The Rake and co-director of Skeletons in the Closet, both from 2018 on Amazon Prime. Hello, Tony.
Hello
Hello.
again.
Yeah.
How did the idea of the rate come along?
So we were developing a feature-length version of The Muck, which is a short film that we did in late 2013 that went to South by Southwest and a bunch of other big festivals in 2014. So we were trying to develop that short into a feature, and when after about 6 or 7 months of us trying to get it developed, it wasn't getting the interest and financing that we had hoped for. I went over to my special effects supervisor, Jason Kane's place, and Jason and I are both real big horror film fans, and we've been working together since 2010. He was an effects artist on my World War II Nazi zombie film, A Chance in Hell, and so we were hanging out and just bullshitting, and I was kind of just aggravated because I really, was disappointed that The Muck wasn't going to get turned into a feature. And he's like, well, why don't we just make something else? Let's make a monster movie. And I was like, well, I'd love to make a monster movie, but what are we going to do? And he goes, let's do a creepypasta. Have you ever heard of The Rake? And I was like, well, not really. I don't really frequent Reddit or anything like that. And he is a real big Reddit connoisseur. So he started kind of leading me down the road of all the creepypastas outside of Slender Man, which everybody obviously knows about. And I thought that The Rake was intriguing enough to kind of say, okay, well, maybe we can build upon this, story as the foundation and kind of go from there. And so, basically that was like October of 2014. And by the end of November, I had met with my co-writer, Jeremy Silva, and we began developing the script for the feature of The Rake. By the end of December, we had a script, and my co-producers, Robert Patrick Stern, Sarah Sharp, Jim Peterson, and Angela Cox, the five of us really started, developing the movie and getting everything together. And we were shooting by the end of March 2015, so it was a very fast turnaround. And it's really crazy how that movie all came together as quickly as it did, and really became as big of a production as it was for us. And it was really, I had produced and directed It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To. Prior to that, which was all the way back in 2005, I started making that film right after I graduated from Thomas Savini's effects school. And so this was like really the second thing that I was one of the main producers of. And all those guys, it was, again, kind of like the first feature that they were all really, at the helm of in terms of producing. And so it was just kind of crazy how we got, we created this project that ended up really growing in scope like it did. And it just, I don't know, it ended up being a pretty cool project to be a part of. And I'm proud of the team for being able to stick with it and create a movie that I think has a lot of really awesome content in it.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up some of your past. Like you said, you attended Tom Savini Special Effects School in Pennsylvania. One of my favorite people ever to interview, and I've met personally a few times, Fred Vogel. He actually came on one of the posts and talked about what a great filmmaker you were. But I know Fred is an alum too. How big was that in your pursuit of becoming a filmmaker? How paramount was the Tom Savini School?
Well, to clarify, I'm 95% sure Fred was just an instructor.
Yeah.
And he was before my time. But Fred is definitely a staple in Midwestern and Pennsylvania in particular, independent cinema, and is just also quite possibly the nicest person I have met in my 15 years of making independent horror films.
And he makes the sickest fucking films ever, and
yeah.
he's the nicest guy you could ever meet.
Yes, he like you watch the August Underground series, and then you meet and sit and talk with Fred for an hour, and you will not believe that it is the same person responsible for those films. But he's just an incredible staple in the independent realm, and I'm just so fortunate to call him a friend and a brother in arms, so to speak, in our battle to overtake Hollywood. not either of us ever actually want to be Hollywood, but so the Savini School was important in the sense of it not only introduced me to a lot of really amazing artists and really good friends of mine, a number of which I still work with to this day. A lot of them are effects artists on my films. But, I didn't want to go to film school because there's 1,000 directors at film schools. So I wanted to go to special effects school to not only rub my sweet spot for art and creating and special effects work, but also because I figured it would be a good foot in the door and give me an understanding of practical special effects, because a lot of directors do not understand how much time goes into special effects and how special effects work in regards to, shot setups and stuff like that. And so it was a really important angle for me as a producer director to get an education like that. And then, I didn't really end up needing film school because shooting It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To was my film school, so to speak. I basically spent my life savings buying a camera and making a horror movie with my friends in an abandoned funeral home in Pittsburgh. And that was cool. But other than that, the great thing about Savini School is just that it just going and spending the money that I spent to go there, it's like I almost had to make a movie, because if I didn't, then I wasted all that time for nothing. And, I was also in a pretty serious relationship at the time that I really I didn't put it on the back burner, but obviously moving 3 states away from your significant other doesn't make the relationship any easier to handle. And so it's like I kind of got to a point where I said to myself, if I don't make a fucking movie, all of this is a waste, and I want it to be considered a waste. I'm a pretty firm believer in being a doer, not a talker, because I've met way too many talkers in my life. And I'm just so irritated by people who talk the talk and don't walk the walk that I kind of had to talk myself into making a movie. And so part of that was the education. It's like, well, you just spent $45,000 going to this school. You might as well make a fucking movie, otherwise it's all wasted. So.
And you've also worked with another legend who I'm very fond of as well, Sid Haig. You did High on the Hog. So yeah, Sid he's going to be sorely missed. Hey, I got to meet both of those guys. I used to work with the guys at Days of the Dead back before ownership changed, and I was lucky enough to meet both of them there. And you got to, how was it working with Sid near? You worked with him in 2012, so he was still getting around pretty good, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was still a number of years after Devil's Rejects, so obviously he was a little bit older at the time, but it was amazing. Sid, we got on High on the Hog. It was shot out in Galena, Illinois, which is a really nice, picturesque area of the state, whereas most of the rest of the state is kind of just cornfields. And then Chicago, obviously. And so it was really, really beautiful, and we were kind of just away from our families and friends and everything and our jobs. And all of us lived in a roadside motel for a month. And so we became a family. And Sid was the the grandpa or the uncle of the family that really just kind of, was there to say, like, look, guys, this is how it's done because I've been doing it for 50 years. And everybody respected the shit out of him because who's going to say no to Sid Haig? And I've said it a number of times, and I'll say it again now. The best thing about Sid is that he really respected me, and he made me understand that I earned that respect. That he didn't just give it to me because he got paid to be an actor in this movie. And so he was just doing his job because at least he was responsible enough to do his job. He actually wanted to make the movie better because he believed in not only the script, but also the people that he was surrounded by that were working there. And, a lot of us were amateurs or novices. It was only the second film I'd ever directed, and I wasn't even a producer on it until the producer that was on the film ended up leaving set. So, it's like we all kind of had a trial by fire together, and Sid and myself and Robert Patrick Stern, who has been my brother in the trenches for 10 years now, on the Rake and Skeletons in the Closet and the Muck and everything I've done, basically. We were all pretty much promoted to producers when that one producer walked off set. And so because of these trial by fires, we really all just became so close. And just living with him and spending 2 weeks hanging out and directing him and working with him was such a wonderful and tremendous tentpole experience for me. It was one of those moments in my career that's always going to shine as a turning point in my confidence. And a lot of it has to do with him and a lot of the people that were involved on that production, and just seeing how willing he was to be a participant, an active participant in making that movie better than what it could have been and what it should have been, for all intents and purposes. We weren't working with a lot of money. We weren't working with a lot of experienced crew members or cast members. And to everybody's credit, we all came together and said, look, we're going to throw all of our inexperience and inhibitions to the side, and we're just going to make the best damn movie that we can because we're in this together and we're a family. And it was just such a wonderful experience at the time. And, I think fondly of those 4 weeks that we were in Galena in 2012 and the subsequent years afterwards, hanging out with Sid. So, at Days of the Dead and stuff. So he is going to be missed. And I wish I would have had another opportunity to work with him again because we talked about it often and it just didn't work out.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad you're able to have that experience too. And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't going to be able to meet him now, but the people who did meet that man, they all love him. So that's awesome that you got to work with him. Now, just speaking about the Rake, I had a question for you. Me and Raj were talking about this earlier. It seems to have a little disdain for California. He's a California guy, so and I was explaining it to him. You'll see it in independent work sometimes. Just I wasn't sure if you were pointing towards maybe Hollywood in particular, or it was a semi-political statement. Was there anything behind the shots at California?
Where's all this hate coming from, Tony?
No. I mean that's all just stuff. I mean, I actually rather enjoy California. Every time I've been out to the different parts of California, I really enjoy, how beautiful it is out there. And I can't say so much about the experiences I've had with people from California, and I have a lot of friends that are out there, but no, it's just that was just part of the script,
Okay. So it wasn't any deeper meaning. It's just how it ended up in the writing.
Yeah, considering there's a lot of symbolism in the Rake and a lot of little hidden like Easter eggs and stuff to things that I love, and things that I don't love. The California distaste is definitely not one of those Easter eggs.
Okay, yeah, because we're talking about it because unfortunately, sometimes people might see that as a political statement for the overwhelming liberality, if that's even a word, of
I like it.
California. And we were talking about that, and my take was if there was something behind it, it might have been more pointed at Hollywood and just the pressures of making a film and dealing with that. But yeah, that's why I was just curious about that.
No, it was just, we when we were coming up with the story, it was like, okay, well, Nicole has moved away from the Midwest with her husband because of a job, and now they're moving back to the Midwest, and she wants to reconnect with her foster brother and sister.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, let's have them move from California, and we're not even saying that her husband was a filmmaker or anything, just that he was, had a job in California, and obviously a lot of people have their opinions of Californians, and I assume you're referring specifically to the whole fucking famous people in Kale comment.
Well, it's like in the first, I want to say at least in the first half hour, there's like at least 4 different statements made by maybe 3 different people. Oh, fucking California, or like, oh, we had to get out of California. I was like, geez, what is going on? All this hate for California.
And my joke to Raj is that's how most people outside of California feel about California, though. You're just not really.
So much jelly.
I've never had experiences with people in California that were just like I wasn't walking down the street in LA and had someone treat me like shit or anything like that, necessarily. So no, it's just a matter of adding to the dialogue to build the characters up in the film so that we have an understanding of why they came home and the importance of family to Nicole.
I had a couple things. So I love the monster. The monster, there's something about really like wet, drippy monsters that are really gross and like, I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way. And it maybe even reminds me of Alien. If you remember, does David remember Alien? Favorite movie of all time over there, this guy. But that drippy kind of like KY jelly, right? All over the monster. That's what it was. But yeah, the Rake was awesome. That face with the excessive amount of teeth, and I was like, oh, this is great. And my favorite actor in the movie was, I'm gonna mess up his name, try not to do it on purpose, but Joey, is it Bichichi? Bichichi? Bichiki. Okay, is that Italian?
Or Bichiki, yeah.
Something like that.
I believe he's Italian. I don't know his heritage.
He had such an interesting face, and I really liked. It was almost maybe like what's his name? Oh my God, Brody, Andy Brody,
Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody. Yeah, it's like there's an Adrian Brody kind of look to him, and I was waiting for him to just flip out and kill everyone. I was like, oh, something's gonna happen. Like this guy's just on the edge constantly, and he's gonna flip. But there was something about him. I don't know if he's in any movies or how you found that guy, but I really liked watching him. I was going to ask.
He really had no time for your little mental illness either. Don't give me all that.
He was just like
little whining mental illness shit.
I made my money in California. You dragged me out in the middle of nowhere. Fucking California. That's right. But what would you say was the most difficult aspect of making this movie, whether it was casting or the writing or the creature creation, or like what would you say was the most challenging part?
Man, that's a tough question. The toughest part of this movie is not seeing it get the love that I think it deserves, to be completely honest. I think that the film, for considering it was made for less than $200,000 and considering the fact that we shot it on a shoestring budget and were able to, get some really wonderful talent in front of the camera as well as behind the camera. We got a perfect location for it. The special effects were far beyond any that I thought that we would end up accomplishing. The monster turned out way better than I could have ever imagined. And again, like I told you earlier, the fact that my special effects supervisor and I were sitting in his living room in October talking about making this movie, and 5 months later we're making the movie. The fact that it all came together, and when we walked off that set, when we had our wrap party the night of the last day of shooting there, the principal photography of the movie, it was like everybody just felt so damn good about it. Like everybody was like, and I think that that's kind of this, you're on a drug high when you're making a film, especially if you're a fan of the genre of the movie that you're making. So it's like everybody was just so excited about The Rake, because when we were making it, I think everybody was just so blown away with how good it looked while we were shooting it, that I feel like it's, it hasn't really it hasn't really received any promotion outside of what I'm doing to promote it. And I feel bad for the people that put a lot of time and effort into it, because I think that it deserves more attention, because I think it is a good movie. And I'm not just saying that as the filmmaker. I as a fan, I think it's a cool story. And, you talk about Joey Bachiki and how, his character was made to represent Jack Torrance from The Shining, because the movie is The Shining meets Alien, which are two of my three favorite movies of all time. The third being The Thing. And so you've got The Thing and Alien, which are ooey gooey monsters, which you brought up. And then you've got Alien and The Shining, which are atmospheric, slow building, tension based horror. And that's what I wanted to create with The Rake. And so this is a combination of those three films. And so Joey's character, Andrew, was a red herring. He's supposed to be this Jack Torrance character that you think is going to go crazy and murder everybody. Or is it Ashley, the crazy sister with the mental illness, or is it actually a monster? And so, we really, Jeremy and I, my co-writer Jeremy and I, really put a lot of time into trying to, hone these characters and the story, so that it not only made sense, but that it was sophisticated and it was smart. And I just feel like it could have gotten out there and gotten a little more of attention, and especially when I'm not such a big fan of a lot of the popular horror films that have come out in recent years. The movies that get all the attention, like we were talking about Quiet Place earlier. Quiet Place is one of the dumbest plots I've ever heard of for a horror film, and and if I ever meet Krasinski or whatever his name is in person, I'll say, look, dude, I respect you as an actor, and I think you did a great job in Office, but I think Quiet Place is just not a really smart idea. So congratulations on making millions of dollars off of a suit.
It's like, thank you. He gives you that Jim look.
and I was talking about, I don't normally try to rate films that I have a director on, because I don't want to seem partial. But me and Roger talking about it. Now, I'm notoriously conservative in my rating. Like, for a movie to get a 10, it's very rare. But he asked me, and I said probably like a 6.5. But to me, that's a film that is well above average. I gave Uncut Gems 6.5s, and people, think that's the greatest film ever made, it seems like. But for the budget that you have, and in my opinion, I think it was a very respectable film. I think the acting was solid. And my two favorite parts of this film is I really like the cinematography.
Yeah.
The shot with the reveal at the end I thought, not at the very end, but the first reveal of the monster, I thought was a really really good shot. That was probably my favorite shot of the film, and also the special effects. But one thing I want to ask, in your mind, is writing this, is the monster literal, or is it just
Mm.
part of their brain?
So it's both. I when I'm promoting and selling this movie at conventions, I basically say it's if Candyman or Freddy Krueger were a werewolf. So
Okay.
it's supernatural in that it does not adhere to the rules of our dimension, so to speak. It can appear and disappear because it's connected to the mind of a person. It's basically a pestilence that can take on a physical form, is how I like to describe it. And that's the unfortunate thing again, is that you look at the film and it's 79 minutes long, and some people say it's a good thing that it's so short because you run through it really fast. But to me, there's like 15 minutes that was left on the cutting room floor, and a lot of that was character development and creature mythos explanation and backstory. And so if you would have had that included in the edit, you would understand more about kind of what the purpose of this creature is. And it's,
Mm.
like I said, it's a pestilence. It attaches itself to somebody who's weak and feeble, and it starts to infect them and sucks on all of the positivity and healthiness and happiness that's within them and around them. Like if you notice in the movie, at the end of the movie, the fruit is rotten in the kitchen
Mm.
on the counter, and all the plants in the house are dead,
Yeah.
and so it's like slowly infecting everything around it, including the people around it. And that's why Andrew, the husband, becomes more and more insane, like Jack Torrance. It's because he's being affected by the pestilence that is the rake. But then once it gets to be strong enough, like Freddy Krueger, it can actually affect the physical dimension. And so that's kind of what it is. And it's I don't know. It may not make 100% sense, but how many horror films do make 100%
No.
sense?
No, if there was 15, unfortunately, I know you try to cut down on film for time and festivals, but yeah, I would have liked to see a longer version of this.
Yeah, me too.
I like the pacing of it, but yeah, if there was more character development, I would have. If this film was an extra 20, 30 minutes, it wouldn't have bothered me at all to runtime.
Well, and it would, I really wish that in my contract I had the ability to do a director's cut one day, but unfortunately, that's just not the case. And so it's one of those films that just kind of, it was at the time something that I looked at and said, this is the movie that'll put us on the map. This is the one that, it was our follow up to The Muck, which went to South by Southwest and Screamfest and had a really nice amount of success. And we thought, okay, the Rake is going to go to these festivals. It's going to get a premiere at something like one of those, or Fantasia or TIFF, and we're really excited about it. And then from there we'll be making bigger movies, and that didn't end up happening, and it obviously it didn't stop us from making movies. My fiance and I are traveling next week to Kansas City to work with Rob and Sarah and a lot of the team on the feature-length version of The Stylist, which is Jill Sixx's feature-length debut. It stars Najara Townsend from Contracted and Brea Grant, who's in pretty much every horror movie now. And so we're really excited about that, and I'm really excited that my producing partners are out there making another movie. They also just did Gags, the clown, which came out a couple months ago.
Okay.
So it's like we're obviously still keeping busy, and obviously we did Skeletons in the Closet too, which I know you guys want to talk about. But
Yeah.
The trajectory of all of our careers could have been different had the Rake just had a little more love and attention that I think it desperately deserved. At crucial moments during the production and post production, and then distribution processes.
Yeah, there's so many, and I'm a lifelong horror fan. in horror is usually going to be pretty much above all else. Obviously, I love film in general, but as a horror fan, just going into some of these movies blind, there's so much garbage out there. So half the time it's just sorting through what's out there, and it's unfortunate that if I had never known who Tony Wash was, and I just kind of stumbled across this on on Amazon Prime or something, I would have been really pleasantly surprised. And seeing it get like the ratings that it has, I don't think it's really fair, but it's IMDb is just full of morons half the time. But yeah, folks, I really would tell you to go check this out. If you're a fan of more technical side of horror and you're a fan of FX, definitely check it out. And I want to ask you about the final big FX piece. That's basically when not to give it away. I guess I can't really talk about it too much without giving it away.
Be vague.
But how the Rake morphs out of another body. Was that like a one-shot type deal? Because it seemed like a lot of work.
Well, we shot that sequence over the course of 3 days.
Holy cow.
And which was pretty awesome because my dad was actually on set for one of the 3 days. So, and he's paid pretty close attention to my filmmaking career over the years. And he's a retired dentist, so it's not like he's a more traditional person in regards to earning a living, but he's part of the reason why I am a horror fan. He introduced me to a lot of that stuff when I was a kid, and so
that's scary, a dentist in the horror films.
The dentist.
So just to have him on set for one of the nights while we were shooting some of that stuff was really awesome to see his reaction to how it all looked. But when we shot over 3 days, we basically broke it down between the initial death, so to speak, and then a day for the initial part of the birth, and then the third day was like the full-on creature. And we had 3 red cameras on set when we were shooting that stuff. So we were able to get 3 different angles of every single take.
It was played by Frederick Ford Beckley, I see. The Rake?
Yes.
Is he really that tall?
No, so he's
okay.
Not, and that's part of the reason why the Rake doesn't move, because the 2 guys who built the suit, Tom Cassidy and Reed Cesar, who are amazing special effects artists, and they're 2 out of a team of like 15 effects artists on the Rake that were helmed by Jason Kane, and these are all Tom Savini Effects School graduates, because I call the school up and say, hey guys, I'm making a movie, do you have any students that want to work on a movie and get a real credit, and so it kind of benefits both parties to do a collaboration. And so these guys had just graduated and were driving out to California, and they stopped in Chicago and lived in our spare bedroom for 3 weeks and built the monster in my basement. And so they basically took like a plywood board and like a 3x3 foot plywood base, and they made these stilts that they then crafted the creature's legs around, and then they had shoes stapled basically to the top stilts, and then Freddy would get into the one piece suit, stand in the shoes, and then they'd put the gloves on his hands and his arms, and then the animatronic head, which the mouth opened and closed when Fred would open his mouth and close his mouth. And so that's how the suit ended up, coming together. But it was quite the process.
Oh, and it's such an amazing job too. I've seen movies with 10 times that budget who can't make a creature like that. So it's a very, very impressive.
I really appreciate that, and on behalf of the effects team and everybody that worked on the Rake, I love the people that I made that movie with. They're my family, and they are some of the most amazingly talented, amazingly dedicated, and amazingly kind people. That again, it was such a wonderful experience, and I'm so proud of what we accomplished on that film. Much with all of our films. That we really appreciate hearing you guys say that, and not even just the creature, but like you look at just all the effects in that movie. I think that the female Rake that's in the woods,
oh yeah,
so scary.
Yeah, all around good work on that. I was going to ask, did you have a question, Raj?
Yeah, I was going to say, when you mentioned everyone was like that Andrew was a red herring, and then now that I think about it, when you started mentioning more and more characters, it's like, yeah, there were a lot of red herrings. There was the girlfriend or fiance of Ben's who had the 9mm, and then Ashley with her mental issue, and then we found out that Ben also was also, obviously he was part of the whole traumatic scenario in the beginning, but then Nicole she also verbalizes that I'll do anything to protect my baby. It's like everyone just puts themselves in this position of like, yeah, I'll kill anybody. And of course, Andrew is just more of the actual, like, he's just physically standing and staring and just seething at, from his mouth while he's talking to Ashley about how pathetic she is. And it was just, when I look back, it's like, yeah, you really like pass the torch for everyone to kind of figure out, like, well, who's going to flip first, kind of thing. And I was going to say the saddest moment in the movie, and I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but the wine cellar. When Andrew goes down there and all the wine is open, and I just I used to make wine at home, and I was like, oh my gosh, what years were those? I was upset, and I was like, oh, I wanted to get whoever. It's like, damn you, Rake.
Yeah, it's and that, I mean, those are some beautiful shots too. The way that Rob and our gaffer Brian Daly and their whole team, the way that they lit that basement, and Sarah's entire production design department, the way that they set all that up looked really cool. And that was the whole thing. The goal was so that an audience is watching this movie thinking, okay, like if you've ever seen Lovely Molly, or coincidentally, while we were shooting The Rake, It Follows came out. And so, like, to me, It Follows really became like kind of a comparison piece for us with The Rake, because to me, I love It Follows. I think it's a great film, but yeah. I was so disappointed because there's no monster in it. You never see the monster. And so, like, to me, it's like I wanted to blow audiences away with the monster in The Rake, because I want them to be sitting there watching it thinking, okay, it's like Lovely Molly, or it's like It Follows, where we think it's a monster movie, but the monster is just symbolic of the monster that's within us all. And then, nope, all of a sudden there is a fucking monster, and it's going to rip your body open, and tear you in half. And so I really wanted to build those red herrings as deeply as we could, and think that overall that's still represented in the movie pretty well. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of thought that went into a lot of that, and a lot of other things too. My fiance is sitting here and she's like, you need to mention the Easter eggs.
Oh yeah, tell us. Oh, will it spoil a lot?
No, I mean, like,
okay.
You're basically saying, Raj, you're saying you're not a big fan of The Shining, but David, you are a big fan of the original Shining?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, you probably saw the Calumet can.
Yep.
That he's got the nails in or the screws in for the wine rack. But then I was at an antique shop in Volo where we shot The Rake with Rachel Melvin, who plays Nicole, on one of our days off, and I saw that and I was like, I have to buy this. It's got a movie. if you watch the movie again, there's the scene where Ashley is sitting outside on the deck smoking a cigarette when she first sees the female Rake in the woods. She sees herself in the woods.
Yeah.
And Nicole and Andrew are talking about her inside the house. They're kind of standing in the threshold of a sliding door.
Yeah.
And on either side of that sliding door were these big glass windows. And I had a friend of mine, Matt Lebrano, create these wooden kind of cutout pieces that would go over those windows. Very similar to like a lot of 70s houses. The architecture in 70s houses had like these elaborate wooden like kind of carvings. And if you look at it, it is the overhead of the maze from the Overlook Hotel.
Oh, I missed that. I'll have to go back and see that.
It's obviously it's very obscure. No one would ever really pick that up. But, you know, again, the goal here was to, you know, a lot of the color palette is very similar to The Shining in terms of the oranges and browns and stuff like that. And so, yeah, the Alien and The Shining were very much so the two films I was trying to create, you know, homages to in this. And so that's where there's a couple of those things that I would love for people to kind of look at that and be like, oh, yeah, there it is. That's really cool.
Well, and this is a general question about your directing style. Are you more of an exacting director, or are you more actor friendly, kind of let the actors play their parts? How do you see yourself as a director?
I try and let everybody grow with their part. I believe that, you know, if I wanted to be a one-man army, I would have been a writer or I would have been a painter. To me, making a film is all about cooperation and collaboration. And I think that a movie fails when egos get involved and when people are unwilling to understand that it's not just one person who's involved, but a team of people. And so I try and give everybody an opportunity to share in the creative process while also maintaining, you know, the reins, you know, and pulling on those reins when need be. And so, you know, with the actors, somebody like Joey, for example, who played Andrew, he's very method. He wanted to be called Andrew when we were on set at all times. To the point of where even like Rachel and him, you know, offset when, you know, like, or off camera, like she got to the point where she was kind of like, you know, he's kind of difficult to be around because he was being Andrew. And I loved it because it was like, here's this guy who's putting everything into this movie. He is sacrificing a potential friendship with this actress who he could go back out to Hollywood and they could be friends and they could maybe work together on things. But he's willing to sacrifice that potential relationship because of this role. And I really appreciated that dedication. And so in situations like that, I kind of let him do his thing. And he would say, you know, can I do this? And I'd be like, go for it. And then in other cases, I would push people to do things. You know, at one point I actually told an actor, I'm like, you are an actor, act. And I remember, you know, my friend Rob being like, Tony, you can't say that. I'm like, well, why not? Everybody else here is doing their job. He should be doing his job. You know? And,
I was going to say, was there a scene, since you mentioned that he requested stuff, was there anything that made it to the film that was just improvised and not really planned at all?
Well, I mean, the whole dinner sequence and Joey and Shanae's standoff at the end of the dinner sequence is really, to me, that is two incredible actors showcasing their talents on screen. And that, again, I feel like if people actually gave The Rake the attention I think it deserves, the Shanae Grimes Beach and Joey Bachiki would really have so much more attention because of their wonderful performances in this film, as well as everybody else. I think everybody did a tremendous job in this movie. But but that sequence where they're standing off and fighting, and he's just glaring at her and like shaking on the verge of tears. And that was very much so where he's like, can I just put a little more into this than you may think? Like, I'm just going to go all out. And I'm like, please do it, So yeah, I think that there's a lot that other people brought to the table that I did not suggest or demand or direct, that is represented on the finished product.
Yeah, I mentioned the cinematography and the special effects, but the acting, for a lower budget horror film, the acting was much stronger than what we're going to get in the average horror film of this budget. What's really surprised me, there was nothing ever seemed really hammy or campy, and I think all the characters, they were believable. So and that's a testament to you as a director and also them as an actor. But I think the acting was very strong.
Yeah, well, I mean, Joey was a mutual friend. He had worked with Robert Patrick Stern and a handful of our other crew members on a couple films in Chicago years before The Rake. And then he had moved out to LA with a couple other people. And so we reached out to him to be in the movie, to audition for The Rake. And he read the script, really liked it, and showed it to some of the people that he works in LA with. And they have a production company and basically said, hey, we love the script to The Rake. We love your short film, The Muck. We would like to give you some money and bring some actors on board and help you sell The Rake to make it bigger and better because we believe in it. And so they're the ones who got Shanae Grimes-Beach, who's from 90210, and a number of other things, and Rachel Melvin, who was Zombievers, and Dumb and Dumber 2, and a lot of other stuff. She was on Days of Our Lives for like 10 years, I think.
Oh, wow.
And then Joey, obviously. And so, they're the ones who helped connect us to, these actors in Hollywood that were, quote unquote, the names in the movie. And they didn't really need direction. I mean, Rachel was such a fan of the movie and really became a nice friend of mine as well. She believed in me and wanted to just give me the movie that she saw that I wanted to make. So it's like I didn't really have to work with people like her. Shanae didn't need any direction at all. She was just so good. And so, I think we just got lucky. We got really lucky that the making of that movie, principal photography of The Rake was a tremendous experience of just a lot of really insane talent coming together at the right time to make something really amazing. And so, yeah, I think it worked out in that regard.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Skeletons in the Closet. This is, would you say, your take on the 80s style anthology film?
Yeah, so I've had the idea in my head since college, so it's been about 20 years now. And I always thought, well, you've got all these female horror hostesses, and then you've got the Crypt Keeper here in Chicago. We've got Sven Gulli, and there's all these other ones, but there really aren't any duos, where it's a guy and a girl. And so I thought, well, what if you combined the Crypt Keeper with Elvira? That'd be a pretty fun dynamic. And so then I kind of came up with this concept of the wife killing the husband and keeping his body in the basement, kind of like Norman Bates with his mother's body. And he's mad at her for murdering him. So they have a very Peg and Al Bundy dynamic. And so it was an idea that I've had for a long time. And it didn't initially take place in the 80s, but that's just kind of how it evolved. And we had the team had created an anthology called Chop Shop back in 2012. We had started shooting it, the same summer that we made not a Chance in Hell, sorry, High on the Hog. And so after making the 5 short films for Chop Shop, there were 4 directors attached, and 2 of them decided, we kind of decided to part ways. So we had 2 short films, and then we had the wraparound for Chop Shop, and really had nothing to do with it. And so after a couple of back and forth ideas, and doing the Rake and focusing on World of Death, which is my Bloody Disgusting web series, as I said earlier, we finally got back to it and said, we need to finish Chop Shop. What are we going to do? And I pitched Skeletons in the Closet as a way of wrapping that all up and making it a feature length. And then we made it. And this was March and April of 2017 when we shot the stuff with the widow and Charlie and the little girl and the babysitter.
Well, I love Ellie Church. I'm an underground horror fan, and if you like underground horror, you gotta love Ellie Church. So it was good to see her in that role. But the dynamic between her and Charlie was, it was amusing and almost reminded me of how I watch movies at home sometimes. My sarcastic nature is with Charlie and me and my wife's banter going back and forth. So I really like that dynamic there. How did you come across Ellie Church?
I used to have a podcast with Brian Wolford, who ran Drunken Zombie and Horror Junk, and now he's got Geek Nerdery, and Ian Davidson, who's Talk Without Rhythm, and it was called It Came from the Underground. And the first one we did, the first episode was interviewing Scott Shermer, and I think Brian Williams was on it, and Arthur Cullifer for Found. And so I've known of Scott for some time, and when we were shooting pickup shots for High on the Hog in 2016, I wanted to get one of, a independent scream queen to play DJ Mary Jane for High on the Hog. And so I reached out to Scott and asked him if he had recommendations, and he, put me in touch with Haley J. Madison and Ellie Church. And Haley ended up not getting back to me with an audition tape, and Ellie did, and Ellie's was perfect. So we cast Ellie to play DJ Mary Jane in High on the Hog, and then as soon as her and I worked together on that, I immediately said she needs to be the widow in Skeletons in the Closet, and so that's how that ended up happening, and we've become friends, since then, and are trying to figure out a way to work together again.
Yeah, it's awesome. I was doing another podcast at that time, and I had Scott Sherman. I had him on for Headless and Found. And Scott's such an awesome guy too, and it's great to see. It's great to see all you guys working together, because there is a lot of good talent out there. Now with Skeletons in the Closet, so pretty much you already had the actual segments already done, and was the wraparound you were pretty much doing, or how did that work?
So yeah, in May of 2012, I shot Grandma O'Malley's Pantry, which is the little girl staying at her grandma's house. My co-director did The Dismantler, which was the two robbers in the haunted graveyard. And then I co-directed with Robert Patrick Stern the wraparound for Chop Shop, which was the first person point of view of the guy being processed in purgatory, so to speak.
Yeah.
In the summer of 2013. And so we had those 3 segments, which was about 55 minutes worth of content. And so then we, like I said, came up with 2 or 3 different ideas over the years to wrap those up, and none of them ended up panning out. So then I pitched in late 2016 Skeletons in the Closet as a means of wrapping up this and turning it into a feature. And, in college, I had the idea for the widow and Charlie, but I did not have the babysitter and Jamie, the little girl. That idea I came up with kind of as a way of adding to the content and adding another tier to the whole story. And so I pitched that to everybody, and they were on board with it. And so then we went in March and April of 2017, and we shot Ellie and Adam as the widow and Charlie. And then in April of 2017, we shot Jamie and the babysitter. And so that ended up giving us enough content for a feature length.
I really loved how you worked the wraparound into the rest of the segments. My big issues with anthology sometimes is the wraparound is almost kind of just throwaway.
Right.
I'll give you a perfect example. One of the better anthologies in the last few years, in my opinion, is Nightmare Cinema. But the wraparound, you have Mickey Rourke and everything, and the wraparound is like, it plays a little bit into it, but it just seems like you didn't even need it there. You could have just played these as short films. But the fact that you made it all tie together, even though these segments were shot so long before the rest, I think that was a really good accomplishment, and I really loved what you did there.
Well, thank you for that. The really cool thing was that having those 3 films done beforehand allowed my co-writer John Halusik and John and I have worked together for a decade now on different projects, but it allowed us the ability to watch those movies and familiarize ourselves with those stories so that we could write around them. You know, it was like we were able to watch them and say, okay, well, here's a moment where we can cut out of that movie and have the widow and Charlie comment on the what's happening in that movie at this time. Or, you know, here's a moment where the little girl can comment on something. And so, you know, it was really awesome that we were able to have that content ahead of time. And that's why we deliberately shot the widow and Charlie stuff before the Jamie and babysitter stuff, so we could put the widow and Charlie on the TV in the family room while they were actually watching it. So it's not like we're green screening it on, actually on the screen. So it all just kind of worked out, and that's part of you know, patting, I guess, you know, all of us on the back for the production coordination and how we orchestrated it. But the really cool thing, I think, the kismet of it all, the serendipitous opportunity here was how the stories all, you know, weave together, where you've got, you know, even another story that was involved that was never originally a part of Chop Shop was Meisner, which is directed by Rhian Owen, who's also the actress in Meisner. That's the girl tied up to the chair in the basement.
Okay.
Originally, we had made that to be a segment of World of Death. Rhian wanted to direct a short film, and that was an idea that I had since college as well. And so I said, well, here, why don't you direct this? And so she directed, you know, this story that I had, and we never released it in World of Death. So we thought, well, let's add this to Skeletons in the Closet to kind of give us 5 more minutes of content. And it's perfect because, like the widow says and Charlie says in the movie, here's a woman who dreams of killing her husband, and the widow actually did kill her husband. So it like gives them pertinent content to comment on, which I thought was really cool.
Well, and also, you co-edited this film as well, correct?
I mean, that's more. There are credits on this film that people were given because we all kind of worked together. Like, I edited the original version of Graham O'Malley's Pantry, and then my co-director, basically, who was the editor of the film overall, you know, kind of re-edited it. So, and we would sit and work together. We did this on High and the Hog. We've done this on multiple different things where we would sit down and spend, you know, he would work on it at his house, and then for a month, and then 1 week out of the month, he would come down to where I was living, and we would work on it together. So there would be a lot of suggestions and stuff included that I would have provided. But overall, the actual art of editing was done by him.
Yeah, because I was going to say that this type of film hinges so much on the editing process, in my opinion, and it's done really well. So I just want to give kudos there because it seems like it was a tough edit job.
Yeah, I think a lot of caffeine was definitely attributed to the abrasive and aggressive edit that the movie is. If you guys ever watch High on the Hog, you'll definitely see very similar editing style in that film as well. But that's the great thing again about having the couple of segments made already, was that when we were writing the script, Johnny and I were able to basically say, well, this is where we cut in here and this is where we cut in here. And so, there was finessing obviously involved and little pieces here and there that were added in the edit, but it wasn't like we had to stretch very far to find ways of cutting in and out, because a lot of that was already there, and thus also caused the dialogue to be a certain way. It was pertinent because we knew we were going to cut to this from this part of the movie and have somebody say something, at that time.
And I saw that there was a little Easter egg to your own movie. It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want to. The video case is seen in the film.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, the trailer is playing for that when they're starting Chop Shop, just like the Muck as well. When we first come into Skeletons in the Closet, Jamie, the little girl, is watching TV, and the commercial that's playing on the TV when we first come in is
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent of creating a world. They've got the Marvel universe, Quentin Tarantino, Kevin Smith, they all have their universes. And so I am very much like that too, similar to Stephen King, where, the Widow and Charlie, it can quite easily exist in the same world as the subdivision where the Muck is attacking and eating people. So
Yeah, when that opened up, I was like, what is this movie? And I had to close I was watching it on my laptop and my kids are running around. It's like, I have to close the door. I closed the door. I'm like, oh, it's just a trailer.
yeah.
And you got 2 nominations for the Muck. Where can we get the short film on that? Is that something that's available for people to view online, or?
Yeah, you can watch it on my Vimeo page. You can watch it on, I think it's episode 24 or 34. I think it's episode 24 of World of Death, which is on Bloody Disgusting's YouTube channel.
Okay.
And it's also, if people like physical copies of stuff, it is on the first volume of the World of Death Blu-ray collection. There are 4 volumes. Each one has about 30 short films on it. So you've got about 11, 12 hours of content altogether between the 4 volumes.
The lines in the commercials were hilarious, because I was like, wait, is this local TV that she's watching? They're just cussing up a storm.
Yeah, we had so much fun writing that stuff. So much fun. Just one night, just sitting and writing Sharp Jeans, and my co-director and I are big fans of the movie Cobra. So we did Viper and stuff like that. So yeah, it was
Charlie's line right after she puts the movie on and then jumps his bones. He's like, "Oh, come on, the movie's starting," and then it goes away from them. They're not on screen, and off screen it's just like, "Oh, it's so wet." It's just like, what is?
Yeah,
I know what to expect.
That was Adam ad-libbing. Adam's a pretty funny guy.
And the other thing I liked was, Dynasty Quest, when it came on. There's so many little things that just kept me enjoying this movie. The babysitter just I don't know if this was in the script, but she just has that theme song in her head, and she's like, Dynasty Quest. What?
Yeah, that was a moment where we were just trying to get additional content, and I was like, why don't you hum the theme song to this or whatever? So she just kind of made that up, and yeah, a lot. I mean, there's just so many fun parts of that. That movie was a lot of fun to make, and going back to our childhood, her playing with the Rubik's Cube and the old phone clock radio thing, and that's on the end table, and just even decorating that family room to look like that. A lot of those props were the things that my mom had hanging up in our family room when I was a kid. So it was.
I think there's a lot of homes still decorated that way.
I would love it if my living room looked like that. My fiance would never let me do that, but I've pretty much said that if I can make my man cave still look like an 80s basement, I'm going to.
And I like the babysitter character because as a horror fan, we all know that person who's friend or family member who just doesn't get it, but they just won't shut the fuck up about it either.
Yeah, Elizabeth perfectly. She played the bitch perfectly, and she just came on board and was really awesome. I'm so glad that I think I found her through like a casting website, and she auditioned, and I was just so fortunate that we found her.
Now, Tony, just a general question: do you see yourself always sticking to the horror genre, or do you have sights on other genres, or what is your overall goal? Is it just to stay a horror director?
Well, High on the Hog is a grindhouse movie. It's not horror at all.
Okay.
It's actually action, kind of crime drama. But I've always said I'll direct a Hallmark movie if I had the opportunity, because directing a movie means I'm at this point in my career would be getting paid to do something I love. But yes, I mean, horror is the genre I know best because I've been a lifelong fan of the genre. And it's the genre that I enjoy the most, and I feel like I'm the closest to. I could write horror and come up with horror ideas more easily than anything else. But I will do anything. I'm not funny, so I can't direct a comedy. But I think that if I just want to make movies, that's really the thing, is I just want to be able to keep making movies.
And one question I asked all of our director friends that come on, it said, if you're stuck on a deserted island, what 3 movies? Now, you already mentioned The Shining and Alien. Give us 3 other movies that you don't think you could live without.
Oh, wow. Oh, man. 3 movies, not including The Shining and Alien. Well, I'm not going to throw The Thing in there either because I mentioned that earlier, so I get a get out of jail free card, which is nice. I would say Big Trouble in Little China, just because it's so much fun.
Oh.
God, off the top of my head, if I have to go with, like, if I'm trying to diversify a little bit here, fudge, I'd say Grandma's Boy.
Hey.
That's a good one.
Because so I've got an action movie, I've got a comedy, and then I would go with for drama. It's a toss up between Saving Private Ryan and Shawshank Redemption.
Oh,
all good choices. All good choices.
When you're alone on the beach, it would just be like a rotation then, depending on what you're feeling like then. Be like, drama could feel like a comedy. I'm a little sad about being isolated on this island. Go to comedy today.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I haven't, it's funny because Shawshank Redemption is probably, if someone had to say, like, what is the best movie that you've ever seen, that would probably be the best movie I've ever seen. Like, that is probably, in my opinion, my favorite movie of all time, even though The Shining and Alien are, like, in constant rotation to me. I mean, I just watched Alien the other night. I've probably seen it 100 times, but The Shawshank Redemption is just such a good movie that even though I haven't seen it in, like, probably 15 years, I couldn't imagine not having that movie in my life. I have a quote from it tattooed on my body.
Shawshank Redemption is like the comfort food of films. It's just such. It's everybody knows it. Everybody, God, I've never heard anybody say that they don't like Shawshank Redemption, but it's you can pick that movie and just start it in the middle of it and just be happy.
I've never, despite the fact that it deals with anal sex and prison anal sex. I've never heard anybody talk about prison anal sex and comfort food in the same sentence.
Oh, I guess I'm a little strange.
No, but the reason I said that was because you're probably the first person who's actually thought about categories like, oh, well, I got my comedy, I need a drama. Usually, like, it's just like, well, what are my three favorite films? Like, I just got to have those three with me all the time. But that was very well thought out because, like, you're dealing with emotions when you're stuck on an island and you only have coconuts and you're just stuck there. Like, you need a little bit of, variance between your emotions to help
Are
out.
you? Or get a little logical. I need a really long movie. Like I need to throw Casino or Godfather in there to burn up some more time.
You just bring like a whole series. You just have a box set. That's cheating.
Well, Godfather's like a good 3-hour movie. That'll eat up some time.
Well, and like, I mean, it's tough because that's such a tough question because I mean, comedies. Tropic Thunder is so fucking funny. Revenge of the Nerds is one of my favorite classic comedies. But Grandma's Boy is just so good. And dramas, like I said, Saving Private Ryan's one of the most amazing films I've ever seen. But Shawshank Redemption is my favorite. So yeah, it's like you can't narrow it down to only three. So I figured I'll try and at least narrow it down to one per genre,
Okay, great. So let's you ready to go to the final segment here, Raj?
Yeah. So I was gonna say let's give a warm thank you to Tony Wash for joining us for the two segments. And it was awesome having you for both. I always ask the guests, how long can they stay? Can you stay for all three? Because it's always nice to have someone who may agree with me for a change on movies and, someone who doesn't always just take every second to shit on my Marvel love. So it was awesome having you on, Tony, for our list and joining us for this interview. That was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Tony, it's harder since Raj is over there on the West Coast. It's like still, what is it, Raj? Like 9 o'clock?
It's like 3 in the afternoon. I don't know.
No, I really enjoyed it, and I'm not a hater of Marvel films. I don't like all of them, but I do enjoy a number of them.
You are welcome to come on this show anytime, just for saying that, Tony. You just tell me the time of day.
But no, this was an amazing time. I really love that people such as you guys are willing to not only watch and enjoy our films, but then take it to the next level and actually promote our films. I mean, if it wasn't for guys like you out there helping get the word out about our movies, all of the amazing work that my friends put into these films would be for nothing. And so it means everything to me that there are people like you out there supporting independent.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you so much, Tony.
And you're very welcome.
And before you go, is there a Twitter or Facebook, anything that you want to plug before you head out?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Facebook. I don't have like a fan page or any of that bullshit yet. I'm not famous yet, but hopefully.
After this comes out, man.
Hey, man, if you guys had like 1 million followers, that'd be badass.
Maybe someday.
Get on that. So you can find me on Facebook, just Tony Wash. Wash is like wash your hands. It's very easy. I'm the only white Tony Wash on Facebook. Because there's like 3 Tony Washes. I was hard pressed to believe that there were other Tony Washes in this world, and there are. And then Scotchworthy Productions is on Facebook. I think it's facebook.com/Scotchworthy. And Skeletons in the Closet is also on Facebook. On Instagram, I have and World of Death is also on Facebook. And then on Instagram, I am Scotchworthy, and Skeletons in the Closet and World of Death both have Instagrams as well. But I highly recommend, you can check out The Rake and Skeletons in the Closet on Amazon Prime. You can rent High on the Hog on Amazon. They're also available on pretty much every other streaming, or as us cool kids call it, VOD platforms. But I recommend, us independent filmmakers really cannot sustain filmmaking if it isn't for people supporting us with purchasing our merchandise and stuff. And so if you are a fan of our work, if you are willing to support the little guy, if you like collecting physical media, please go to scotchworthy.com. There's a store on the website. You can buy pretty much all of the films there on either DVD or Blu-ray. You can get the Skeletons in the Closet soundtrack on vinyl, which I highly recommend. We only have a handful of copies left, and it is an amazing 80s style soundtrack. We have T-shirts and posters, all sorts of great stuff. And I would really appreciate any support out there that people are willing to give.
I was just gonna ask, do you guys sell the T-shirt that she was wearing?
We do.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and go ahead and message me over the link as well, and I'll put that up in the group for our group members tomorrow.
Perfect. I will do that. Yeah, I will get you those links. Maybe not tonight, but tomorrow for sure, David. Otherwise, guys, thank you again so much for having me on. I really, really sincerely appreciate it.
Thanks for
again,
spending the
Tony.
time.
And yeah, maybe when the next project is in the works, you can stop back in and talk to us.
That would be amazing. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
All righty. Good night, Tony.
Good night.